Hi, you right guys? Hope you're all okay out there. Today we're going to make a Swiss roll. Now, arguably, a Swiss roll is one of the harder things to make at home. Or one of the harder things to make and get right. Let's put it that way. So hopefully if you follow my steps, it may improve how you make them. And as always, I'll put the recipe and ingredients in the description below. But quickly, we got 4 eggs, plain flour, lemon juice, vanilla extract, sugar. Now I'm using granulated and caster sugar. Caster sugar is not shown there. Cornflour, baking powder, the jam of your choice, and a flavourless oil. And do not use olive oil. It doesn't work with olive oil, believe me. Here we go then. Okay then, so first up we need to separate the eggs, the yolks and the whites. Now this is one dish where you must do it into a separate container first. If you get your yolk in with the whites, you're going to ruin the whole of the meringue you're going to make in a minute. It's always a good practice to crack your eggs into a separate container anyway. Especially if you're using fresh farm eggs. You know, you do get the odd one that's off, and if it's the last egg in a 6-egg mix, you ruin the whole lot. So anyway, we got the whites are in the mixer. Now the mixer bowl is clean, and it is cleaned, and it is cleaned. It is super clean, and it is super clean because any little trace of grease or fat or oil or even egg yolk is going to ruin the meringue. So in with a quick teaspoon of lemon juice. You can use white vinegar if you want to. And I'm just, as it's mixing, I'm just measuring out the flour and the sugar. And what I'm doing now is, I've overweighed it actually, so I'm taking out that 1 tablespoon. Now what I'm going to do, take out a 2nd tablespoon of flour, and I'm going to substitute that with 1 tablespoon of corn flour. What this does, it lowers the protein content of the actual flour itself. Gets it down to, I think it's less than 8%, something like that. And that helps it become a nice spongy mix that doesn't crack. So we just gradually wind up the speed of the mixer, and when the whites have started going a little bit fluffy, we start adding the sugar in about 3 goes. This is the 60 grams of granulated sugar. I'm using granulated for the meringue. Don't put it all in one go, it won't work. Just gradually do it, a little bit at a time. Speed it up. And what we're after is not overly stiff peaks, they're soft peaks, I think you call it. Yeah, like that. A little bit floppy still. And then put the whisk back on, and we're going to mix it for another minute just to make sure all the sugar is incorporated. Nice and slow this time. We're not trying to get it into stiff peaks. And after a minute or so, just set the bowl to one side. And then I've just weighed out the caster sugar. I'm using caster sugar to mix with the egg yolks. I just find it goes better. It's not so gritty. So 45 grams of caster sugar-ish. In with about a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And vanilla is good in any sponge cake because it helps to sort of get rid of a bit of the eggy smell you get sometimes with a sponge. And the sugar, and on with the hand blender. Normally flies everywhere this. Not too bad. And we're just going to whisk it, blend it, whatever we're going to call it, till it's like a white, lemony yellow colour, I suppose you're going to call it. There we are, just like that. Right then, next in with a tablespoon of water. And what this does, this helps the yolk mix recombine with the meringue, the whites. Just a little bit, it's not too much in there, thins it down a little bit, that's all. So give that a mix in. And then we start recombining the eggs. So about, well, roughly half of the meringue. You see how quite light and floppy it is, it's not stiff meringue. About half of the mix in, and we're not being too careful here. All we're going to do is lighten up the yolk mix. Just get it a bit more fluid, a bit more liquidy. And the serious stuff starts in a minute. Now when you're happy with the mix, it's half a teaspoon of baking powder in with the plain flour, and then sift it into the half the mix you've done already. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Just takes the lumps out, puts a bit of air into the mix as well, which is what you want with this. You need a bit of air in there. And we're folding it, and it's like a cut and fold, cut and fold, cut and fold. A bit like old Mr. Miyagi on the Karate Kid. Polish on, polish off, polish on, polish off. Cut and fold, cut and fold, cut and fold. Anyway. So when all the flour's sort of covered in the yellow stuff, put a bit more flour in. You do get the odd bits of the lumps and that in the flour, so it's definitely worth sifting. And like I said, it aerates the mix as well. Cut and fold, cut and fold. Cut. Right then, when it's all incorporated, in with the oil, the flavourless oil. Honestly, guys, do not use olive oil. It just doesn't work. Unless it's just me, I don't know. 40 odd mil of flavourless oil. And you want to get this mixed in pretty quick. Doesn't take long to mix it in. And then it's in with the rest of the meringue. And back again to the cut and fold, cut and fold. I'll tell you what, if you do nothing else from this video, cut and fold will stick with you forever. And when you've cut it and folded to your heart's content without deflating the mix, it's time to pour it into the tray, pre-lined tray. I've used the usual stuff, my release agent and then some baking parchment on top. Lovely view at the bottom of my bowl. And I'm just doing it in two little bits really. Get the bottom lined, push it into the corners. Sort of. Yeah, and just top it up and push it, and then push it into corners. There we are, second time round. And level it off. And a couple of taps on the table. Get rid of any big air bubbles. Oh, and there it is. I had to do that. I saw it on another video. So we're just testing with our finger now to make sure it's all cooked. It springs back. When you press down, it springs back straight at you. And while the cake is cooling, just get a big dollop of jam and nuke it for a bit to soften it up, just to make it so much easier to spread. Right, we're getting ready to tip the cake out of the tin now. So a piece of baking parchment on the table, or in my case on a chopping board. It used to be called greaseproof paper in the old days. Anyway, cover it with caster sugar, spread it around a bit. The cake's still warm now, so be very, very careful. Want to early up, there we go, tip it out. And then gently peel back the lining paper from the tray. If it feels like it's sticking, just wait a minute until it cools a little bit more and it will come off. It's alright. And next up we got to cut off the crusty sides, all four sides. They will stop it rolling, believe me. And as you can see, the cake's sliding around on the caster sugar. All sides are cut off now. So what I'm doing now you see some recipes say to make a couple of little slits in the end of the cake to help you roll it. What I'm doing, I'm cutting out a few little V grooves so it rolls up better. And those little pieces tasted very, very nice actually. And then at the far end, 45-degree cut right to the corner. Once you get the stuff out of the way, Steve. And this is the underside of the Swiss roll when it's rolled up. You can see what the sugar's doing to the... it's not helping it stick at all, is it? There you can see the profile look. Let me pause a second. Next up then is to layer on your jam. I'm using seedless raspberry this time to get it pretty smooth and even all over. And it certainly helped with the microwaving, because you would not do this straight out of the jar, I tell you. Okay then, so that's the Swiss part of it made. Now to add the roll part. So what you do is you grab the baking parchment or your tea towel, you can do this on a tea towel as well, and gradually trying to push it over on itself without forcing it. It's very hard to describe. Peel the parchment back to you and then push the roll forward. Tuck it in with your fingers and keep rolling forwards. You can see how I'm peeling the parchment back as I'm doing it. And as you probably noticed, there's too much jam at the end, so take that off, Steve, before it ruins everything. And there you can see the 45-degree cut we made. That's going to be the base of the Swiss roll. That's going to be the bottom. So now we're just going to carry on rolling, roll the whole lot up. And I'm going to leave it until it totally cools down. I don't know, what's that, 30, 35, 40 minutes? And here it is, 40 odd minutes later, unrolling it. Ooh, nervous. Look at that sugar. Cool. You never know until you get this far. Oh, look at that. Yeah, no cracks on the top. That's what I was after. Oh, sugar everywhere. Be careful handling it. You don't want to undo all your good work by squeezing it too hard. Not a bad roll, that. Right, got to trim the ends off, make it nice and neat. Right guys, that's the ends cut off. I gotta taste this. That is the nicest Swiss roll I have ever made. Oh, but that's the end cuts. God. That's not bad looking, guys. Right, put it down before I ruin it. And then cut it up for the show.